welcome back to Build with the Boys. We now have issue 58 of Hachette's Build the Titanic. It's an exciting one, this one. There's not loads to do, but it's significant to what we're doing with the deck. So in this one, we will be building the first class smoking room, which is going to take up that large chunk of kind of real estate we've got left blank on our decking at the moment, and we're going to apply our last piece of decking to that top deck. So we'll all have that lovely wood veneer over everything now. What this is going to do is this is going to sit in that large open space. The part we made in 56 and 57 is going to sit on top of that one, so you can see we're building up. We're not putting it all together in this one. We're just preparing it for when we get to that stage. So we have some decking to add. We have some little details, some vents and benches to put on. We will bring over the main deck build over. We'll be adding to that. And that'll be all. Now in this one, you do get a pack of AP screws, but you're not going to use them. And as far as I can see, you also don't use them in 59 and 60. But for some reason, they give us a pack of AP screws. So you need to hold on to them. So put those safe with your other bits and pieces. Other things you're going to need from this one, you're going to need the windows that came with issue 51. So your skein of windows came with 51. You're going to need those. You're not. I'm jumping the gun. You're not going to do those yet. You are going to need those for part 60. I'm jumping the gun. But yeah, so wherever you keep your Titanic stuff, keep your AP screws with that one, because we've got this fairly large bag of them, which I assume is going to screw this deck into place. But they've not given them. We're not doing it this one. Why they gave them early, I don't know. At the end of this one, we're going to be talking about the wreck of the Titanic, and why we're lucky to have it, because there was a plan to blow it up. And I'll explain why at the end of this one. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button. And if you are not one of the thousands that watches but haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. We don't bite. We just love to have you along for the ride. It helps our channel massively. But it means you never miss an episode, because we are going all the way to issue 140 when we will have our complete, beautiful Titanic ready for her maiden voyage. So let's get into this. Let's get this one done. This should be good. Okay, so here's what we get inside 58. Here are the AP screws. You're just not going to use them. They're not going to be used, so put those somewhere safe, because at some point they're going to say, use your AP screws, and you ain't going to have any. In this one, I would imagine, yeah. So in there we have the little benches and vents. We'll keep those in their envelope for now. Here is what will be our first class smoking room. We have the decking. You've got to be so careful with this, because it's so bloody fragile. Let's get this out. There we go. So this is the piece that's going to sit on here. Now, to glue or not to glue, that is the question. Well, it's up to you. If you want to glue it, glue it. I don't see anything wrong with that. And then this is the piece that will go on our large piece of decking. Mine's already curled. You can see that there. Mine's already curling. So I think applying some glue is probably going to be the best move on that one. Regarding the decking, we'll have a quick chat about that. Where some people are saying glue, some people are saying don't glue, some people are saying super glue, some people, you got some people that report theirs is coming away and it's bucking, it's bubbling. There are elements, and some people say they don't. There are aspects to this. It depends on your environment as well. So if you're in a place with humidity, that's going to affect this. It just is. So be aware of that. If you've had any bubbling or buckling at this point, it makes sense that you add something more to hold all these down. Now you will have, you see here, plenty of elements that are going to pin this thing down anyway. But there's no right or wrong way. There's no harm. If you want to put a bit of extra to this just to hold it in place, then do it. You know, it's your model. You do it. You do what's right for you. Because it'll be easier to do it now than it will be to remove it all and then do it after the fact. So you make the choice on what's best for you. But there's no right or wrong. But I mean, again, that one I can already see. It's, so that makes me a little squeamish. Let's get this built. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the deck into this. Now I've had, you can see if I get the light on it, a very thin layer of a strong wood glue on there, just to give this a little extra, just to, help it along. Because I don't want it to bend or buckle or anything like that. I just don't, so it's just easier to do it this way. So what we're going to do is going to take the backing off of our deck in here. There we go. Now this should, he says this might be famous last bloody words, this should line up quite nicely. So it shouldn't be Shouldn't be overly difficult to do this one. There we go. So that's where we're going with this one. Let's make sure that's all pressed down nicely. There we go, that's fit lovely. So that's all there is to do in that step there. But weight it down, do whatever you need to do. There is no right or wrong here, you know. So whatever you feel comfortable doing, don't feel like you have to glue it. Don't feel like you don't have to glue it. You do what's right for you. And there you go. So that's that one done. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some detail into this. So we have our first funnel, which is asking us to put on. So we have one of these here, and this should, it's not this one, let's get the right one. It'll be this one here. Now, they're asking this to be glued to the base, and as I've discussed multiple times, if it just fits snug, I'm not gluing. So I don't want to put an excess of glue on this model, I just don't. So if it's snug, it's tight, it fits firm, which that does, I'm not gluing it, because if I do want to take these off later on, paint them or do whatever, upgrade them, I can. Once they're super glued in place, I'm going to have to rip up lumps of deck to do it, and I'm not interested in doing that. But as I said, this one, that ain't going anywhere. So I mean, it's up to you. If you want to glue it, you go ahead and you glue it. But I think it's overkill. I don't think it's necessary. So that one's on. I'll have another one of these to put on, which is this one here, and this goes just down at the front here. Again, if this sits and it sits firm, it won't be glued, which it does. I mean, again, they're not going to come off. They're not going to come off. And again, as this is going in the display case, no one's going to be touching it. There's no reason for me to glue those, and it just means that later on, if I want to, I can. Benches are a little bit different. When it comes to benches, you've kind of got to glue those in because of the nature of them. But I'm not so fussed about the benches. It's the pipe work and the ventilation. If I want to upgrade that, if I wanted to, you know, if 5 years from now they find out, oh, we just found out all of the vent work was pink. I'm sure they won't, but if they did, it means I could take them off and I could make them pink. So that's the idea behind it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add we've got two vents which are going to go in, and they're going to go in here and here. And it's important we get the right ones for the right spot. So this is 58E, that's this one here. And this is going to slot in just over here like so. So that one's going to go in there. Now that's loose. That's loose, so that one might be getting a glue in. And then we have the other one, which is 58G, which is going to fit in just here. Again, that one feels quite loose. Still haven't pushed them down properly. There we go. So, they're not loose. That's me. I just didn't push them all the way down. There we go. So they're actually quite firm. Again, none of this is coming out. I'm quite happy with them as they are. We do have we have two benches to add to here as well. So they are going to go in here and here. Now, I just don't think there's any way of getting around it. The benches won't just sit. So these are things that do need gluing. So I will super glue these benches and I'm going to pop them into place. Okay, so here goes bench number one. We're going to pop this in here. Like so. There we go. So that's bench number one in there. Rather nicely. And bench number two, going to prepare, and we'll add that one, and that will be going just here. Okay, so our final bench is just going to pop in here. Let's pop that one down. There we go. So that is our first class lounge complete for now. Now we're going to bring up the rest of the deck, and we're going to add some deck into that and some benches. Then we're pretty much done. Okay, so this is the section we're focusing on this time. We have our piece here, and then hopefully, I mean, with the parts of the for the davits, I don't think we have a lot of choice to get this wrong. It can only fit on one way. He says. So there we have it. Make sure that's nice and we overlap over here. So push down, held in place. That's where we want to be. So that's how that's going to go. Now, I know that this is where this is going to go, so we'll do a very quick demonstration. That's how this is going to go. So that's what's going to cover that up. Going to pin this down, smooth this all down, get this set, and then we're going to add the benches. Okay, so we have 4 benches to add. We're going to pop our first one in just here. There we go. Nice and straight. There we go. So that's that one in. And now we're going to pop another one there, one here, and one here. So let me get those glued up. Let's get those in place. So there we have all 4 in. Let me take you off your tripod. Might have a proper look. There you go. So we've got those 2 there. And we have these 2 here. And that's all there is to in this stage. And I can show you as we zoom out how we are now looking. I'm looking really rather nice, aren't we? Wow. That's quite the impression. I can't wait to see this thing lit up. We're looking great though, right? So that's all 4 funnels in. That's where our lounge is going to go. This is going to look amazing when this is done. And I am very happy with how we are looking. Let's have a chat. So that's 58 complete. Nice and simple. But again, I mean, you can now see the impact that it's actually had. I mean, if you don't put it together, you can't really see the impact that's happened over the past couple. But you kind of get an idea now of where we're going with this. And it's going to look stunning, right? It really is. But relatively simple. I mean, again, when it comes to decking, again, the environment you're keeping it in, the room it's in, the country you're in, because I've spoken to people that are building this in Canada, America, Malta, Spain, France, Germany, all over the place, all over the world. So your climate is going to affect whether or not something sticks and bonds and glues. I mean, if you've ever seen the paintwork on cars in certain countries, it doesn't hold up under the weather. So it stands to reason that humidity in places is going to have a different effect. So when one person said, mine hasn't bent and buckled, it doesn't mean yours won't. It doesn't mean you've done something wrong. There are a lot of factors in this. So whatever you need to do to make you feel I've given my decking the best chance possible, do it. There's no right or wrong here. There really isn't. If you don't need to use extra adhesive, don't. If you don't need to but want to, do. It's your model, man. You do what you want to do. That's all for the build instructions. So if you're just sticking around for the build instructions, thank you for stopping by. Please remember to both like and subscribe. It helps our channel massively. And it means you never miss an episode as well. You can do that by hitting the bell, which gives you a notification every single time we upload a Titanic or any of the other weird and wacky builds that we're doing on the channel. If you're sticking around for our Titanic talk, it's a quick one today, but we're going to be talking about salvaging the Titanic in the early days. So not now. I'm not talking about now. I'm not talking about removing it from the seabed floor now. I'm talking about in the immediate aftermath of the Titanic. Salvage operations to raise Titanic from the seabed. Now, these were entertained. All of these were entertained. Because, and in my opinion, these are people that genuinely had a right to want the Titanic raised. And these were the families of the people on board. So you had survivors who were like, okay, well, everything I own is currently sat at the bottom of the Atlantic. I'd like it back. You had that. And then you had other people that said, my family were on board. I would like their bodies. We would like to lay them to rest. And I think as human beings, there's something very important to us about burying our dead. Not only is it respectful, but it also gives us the closure of we've laid them to rest, rather than I never saw them again. They're just lying at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's not going to sit well with everybody. I mean, there are some people that have this very romantic view of being buried at sea, and there are other people that just see it as if you've just been left there. So a lot of people wanted their dead. They wanted their people brought back to them, and there was a concern that there were people, and there almost definitely is, that there were people inside the vessel where their bodies were trapped in the vessel. And there 100% is. I mean, let's not be coy here. Definitely, there were people inside the Titanic when it hit the bottom of the floor. They wouldn't have been alive. There's no air. The pressure would have killed them. they would have blacked out. They would have suffocated. They would have their lungs would have been able to cope with that pressure. They would have died. But there is 100% bodies on board the Titanic. Of course there is. Of course there is. So these people wanted those bodies returned to them. But how do you do that when this thing is lying at the bottom of the seabed? So very wealthy families that lost people, that was the Astors and the Guggenheims particularly, invested a lot of money into the Titanic salvage operation and researching what could or couldn't be done. So they entertained the idea of submersibles and diving crews to find the wreckage. But the reality of it is the technology just didn't exist. It wasn't there. Submarines were a thing, but they certainly weren't like what they are now. And nobody had got to that depth before. So the reality is that wasn't going to happen. So submersibles getting all the way down to the Titanic just wasn't practical, wasn't going to happen. So another theory came about on how to retrieve their loved ones, retrieve their dead, and it was to drop dynamite on the wreck and blow it up. And the theory being, well, like the dynamite, we'll get it down there with a long enough fuse to go where it is, explode the wreck, break massive holes into it, and the bodies will rise to the surface. Now, if that sounds ridiculous, it's because it is. It's because it is, but desperate times calls for desperate measures, and necessity is the mother of invention. So some very creative ideas were invented, and this was one of them. That genuinely they entertained the idea of dropping dynamite on the wreck of the Titanic, breaking it open, and letting the bodies float to the surface. What condition are they going to be in? I mean, realistically, what condition are those bodies going to be in if not only have they just been sat at that depth for that long in salt water, but now you're dropping dynamite on them? Because again, I mean, you might just blow the bodies up. But that was genuinely, it was going to be entertained. If we can't get it up off the floor, we need to get the stuff in it, out of it. And the idea was to drop dynamite. What stopped them from doing that was a theory that when bodies under that much pressure, that far down, they said they wouldn't look like bodies anymore. They said they would just become gelatinous lumps because they would all kind of like cave in and compress on itself. That's not true. That's now been completely debunked because a body filled with water won't do that. It won't. And this is the other strange thing as well. Even if they had have progressed with what they were going to do by dropping dynamite on the wreck and blowing a massive hole, blowing the whole top deck off, bodies wouldn't have floated to the surface. And the reason why is because bodies will fill with water and they will sink to the bottom. So the Titanic wreck initially would have had bodies surrounding it. There would have been bodies lying on the floor of the seabed next to the Titanic. There just would have, because this is what happens. That once it's filled with water, it will sink. So bodies can and do sink to the bottom of the ocean. That can happen. The bodies are now gone because nature's taken its course, along with sea life down there and whatnot, and bacteria. The bodies are gone. But on the actual Titanic wreck site, particularly strangely enough, by the stern, more by the stern than there was by the bow, it wasn't uncommon to see, for there to have been bodies. What you do get a lot of is shoes. So there's a lot of shoes that are around the wreck site, and that, by and large, every pair of shoes represents a person. So it's pretty much what would have been left, because the leather and whatnot of the shoes survived the cotton of the clothing and the flesh. Shoes, whenever you see a pair of shoes, typically was where somebody lay to rest. Sad, but that's the reality of what happened. So they did entertain the idea of blowing the Titanic up, and numerous different ideas have been voiced about how to raise the Titanic from the bottom of the ocean. Now, all of these ideas of blowing it up and whatnot were all great and well, but no one knew where it was. So nobody knew exactly where Titanic was. We had a good idea of around about where she was, but nobody knew exactly where she was. So for all the will in the world, with electromagnets and whatnot, that was electromagnets that was proposed because the submarine couldn't drop down low enough. The idea being with enough electromagnets, it would pull you toward the Titanic. You could lower them down and pull up the Titanic with electromagnets. Again, it was never going to work. It just wasn't. So eventually these things were disbanded, but people tried for a very long time to come up with a plausible way of getting Titanic off the bottom of the seabed to the surface. And we'll talk about more about that in the next one. But thank you for stopping by. Join us for issue 59, where we will be adding davits. So we've got more davits going on, some more lifeboats. So again, there's not loads to do in 59, but it's key, it's relevant, it all needs to be done. And it's just bringing our deck into life lovely. So in a world where you can be anything at all, just be nice. We will be back very, very soon with issue 59. I hope to see you then. Take care.